everybody, Jason Burmis here. We got a very special broadcast lined up for you. Now, if you were to believe an angry mob that was out in Vancouver yesterday, my next guest would be a fervent white supremacist racist that's really looking to take this country down, and hence he should be physically assaulted. If you were to believe that. In a place called reality, this is a friend of mine, a colleague for well over a decade in independent media, and somebody who's tried to look beyond the left-right paradigm and also do on-the-ground journalism. My good friend Dan Dix of Press for Truth, and we showed just a little clip of this, and he actually shows an even smaller clip from the other day, where he actually, let's just show you, this is how great the protesters are and how amazing of a job the police officers are doing to protect him.
All right, being escorted out now.
Just top-notch police work, folks. Way to keep people safe. And before we go to Dan, I want to remind everybody that we're both fully demonetized on this platform we're streaming on YouTube. And without explanation, just harmful content, nothing provided. We got a lot to talk about. But not only do I have a GoFundMe, but he's currently got a GoFundMe going on. And if you watch that video, I really do hope that you support Dan as well. So, without further ado, it is the founder of Press for Truth, Dan Dix. Dan, first of all, how are you doing after that entire fiasco where you get arrested at the end?
Man, I'm okay now. The physical assault to me was a bottle to the head. It hurt at the moment, but I'm obviously fine now. At the moment, though, Jason, I got to say, man, it got incredibly intense. At one time, there must have been about 200 or so people who were just vilely wanting my blood, just raging. If you could see the look in these people's eyes, it was quite scary to be surrounded by a mob like that. And then, as you saw from the footage, there's about a dozen police officers or so who jump in to try to so-called protect me from the mob. But in the end, Jason, they ended up making the situation worse overall by drawing these people towards me and then by physically arresting me as the crowd cheered and violently throwing me into a paddy wagon. That was something that I have a very serious problem with.
Yeah, so let's take it from the top, because this didn't just happen. You had been there for about 3 hours, and, although people had differed with your opinions, it was a regular Dan Dix thing. It's where you were going around, you were talking to people, you were getting information, you were challenging people on points, but there didn't seem to be any sort of rift. And then all of a sudden, you kind of get approached by this taller guy, everybody's masked up. And that's one thing I can't stand about these protests in the first place, is that even pre-COVID 1984, these people never want to show you their face. Never want to show you their face. So then, after, this person starts berating you, you have someone coming over telling you that you're a racist and a white nationalist and you need to get out of here. And that's when the crowd begins. Now, on top of the physical intimidation, on top of grabbing your camera at a couple points too, and you've been nonviolent the entire time, you asked them to point out where you've been racist, no one can do so. I'm still waiting, guys. Show me that clip of Dan Dix being racist, and I will grill his racist ass right here on this show. I promise you. Doesn't exist. But also, one of their tricks is to try to get you taken off of YouTube is they'll take a speaker and they'll play a copyrighted song so that you can't live stream. That's and you show a hell of a lot of restraint, brother, because if they do that to me and they touch me, it's probably the second time that I go, okay, I grab your arm, I take your speaker, and I smash it on the ground. That's ridiculous. But you didn't do any of that. Instead, what you did is, as they were getting physical, you made your way to the police. Tell people what happened then.
Well, just to provide a little tiny bit of a context into how we got to this point, I covered a Black Lives Matter rally about a week ago. And it was at that rally when, out of nowhere, a small faction of Antifa types, black bloc looking types, all dressed up in all black with masks, all of a sudden singled me out. One person in particular just said, "He's a bad man. Block that man. He's bad." And all of a sudden, about a dozen people surrounded me saying, oh, what? He's a bad man? Okay, surround him. And they all started saying, Nazi, go home, Nazi, go home. And, I put out a video explaining what that event was all about. It was absolutely ridiculous. So here we are a week later now, just the other day at another Black Lives Matter rally. And one girl came up to me and said, isn't this you on the phone right here from last week's? And I said, yeah, that's me when I was surrounded by a group of Antifa and wrongfully accused of being a racist. Yeah, that's me. And she's like, that is you. You're apparently a known white supremacist. And when I said, well, you're apparently wrong, I'm clearly not, that's when another girl stepped in and just said, we believe black women. No matter what, when a black woman says that you're a known white supremacist, I'm going to believe her. And I said, look, that's mob mentality. That's groupthink. You don't even know anything about me. You don't know who I am. And she just said, I'm just going to believe black women no matter what. That gives an insight into the type of group mentality I was dealing with there. So yes, as the crowd started to really get a little more thick, a little more hairy, a little more intense, it was actually the police officers who approached me. I was standing there. They came up and all of a sudden surrounded me for my protection. They could see things were getting a little hairy. And that's when they started to physically grab me and pull me from the situation. Now, Jason, at that point, I knew it was time to get out of there. I could tell things were getting out of hand. They were escalating rather quickly, and I was ready to leave. But I pleaded with these officers to not physically remove me. I said, please just take your hands off me. Let me walk out on my own, because this is not going to look good. It's going to justify it in the minds of the protesters if they see them violently, grabbing me. And especially when they violently arrested me, Jason, the entire crowd cheered for that moment. Now, here's the big thing, the big point I wanted to make today, the big problem I have with the Vancouver Police Department is that I feel they tried to kill two birds with one stone. So they had a problem there. They had a mob who they needed to keep happy, essentially, and they had an individual, myself, who they felt they needed to protect. When I got assaulted, hit in the head with a bottle, that's when they made the decision to kill two birds with one stone. They said, you know what, let's make the crowd happy by arresting this guy in a displayful way, violently arresting him and throwing him into the paddy wagon. And when they did that, the whole crowd cheered. So they figured, let's please the crowd and let's get him to safety. Boom. Two birds killed with one stone. Well, what they ended up doing in that instance, Jason, was justifying it in the minds of that violent mob that I was a racist white supremacist because the police obviously violently arrested me and tossed me into a paddy wagon. Now, because of what those police did, I am now a target. I can no longer go to a BLM rally or probably all sorts of different protests in Vancouver because the Vancouver Police Department justified it in the minds of the masses that I'm this guy who deserved to be removed from this event because when they violently arrested me, the whole crowd cheered. So I have a big problem with how the Vancouver Police Department handled that situation, and I may be looking to deal with that in the near future.
Yeah, I hope you deal with it legally, because in the first instance, when you're talking to the officer with the sunglasses, there's a moment where you're kind of led away and you kind of start covering this again, but then the mob is forming even greater. It's still not at its peak. And then the second time they came over and they start talking to you and they talk about your protection, and he's like, well, I would hope that you would protect me over them, but then at no point did I ever see more than one officer just go over and warn the crowd. I didn't even see one or two officers single out an individual, even one that got physical with you in the first place, and say, hey, if you do that again, we're going to reprimand you. So I teach my nieces that actions have consequences. And unfortunately, the consequence of what the police did as their action is to verify and validify the actions of the mob, no matter how wrong they were, no matter how violent they were. Instead, their violent actions gave them the outcome they wanted. Might is right. And if you know anything about what we've stood for accountability. Not that might is right mentality, no matter how small or how big, whether it be police brutality or whether it be, the U.S. empire in the Middle East. Might is not always right, and especially not in this case. Now, what I find super ironic is this isn't the first time that you've been out in these public squares in Canada. especially in the last couple of months. In fact, you've been one of the few people on the ground at many of these anti-lockdown events. Now, in retrospect, no matter how ugly this protest was, it hasn't been censored anywhere. In fact, none of the Black Lives Matter protests have been censored anywhere. Yet how many times in the last couple months have your live streams been taken down while you were just showing more peaceful protests about something else? I'd like you to talk about that and describe the techno-irony of it all.
There is such sheer hypocrisy in the fact that, yes, just 2 weeks ago, I was being referred to as a nanny killer for daring to go out and cover these anti-lockdown protests. And again, like you said, you fast forward just a week or two, and here we are. And these healthcare workers in particular, video went viral with over 7 million views, and they're cheering on these people. Yay, so brave. Thank you for protesting. When, as I said last year, I was a nanny killer for doing the exact same thing. This is disgusting virtue signaling at its worst. I saw that culminate at the George Floyd Memorial, which really upset me, Jason, because here we saw politicians and celebrities standing shoulder to shoulder to honor this man that they didn't even know. Meanwhile, I have a friend of mine here in Vancouver whose father died during the COVID-19 lockdown. He wasn't allowed to visit his father. The hospital staff didn't even tell this man why his son wasn't visiting him anymore, Jason. He had to call them, demand that they put a phone to his father's ear, who was in a vegetative state, so he could explain to him why he's no longer visiting. That is absolutely wrong. And then this man died. He can't hold a funeral. He can't go see his dad. The dad wants to be buried in Ontario. They can't have gatherings of more than 10 people. This man had 10 kids alone, so the funeral is not possible. Yet the George Floyd Memorial is praised, and people are cheering on that. It's so unbelievably hypocritical that people could just disband this social distancing stuff. And I'm not saying they should have been social distancing at this funeral. I think it's nonsense. There's no science behind the 6 feet social distancing thing. I just have a real problem with the people who are promoting this event, virtue signaling like as if they're being super righteous people, when just a few weeks ago, they're calling me nanny killers, and my friend can't even hold a funeral for his dead dad.
No, absolutely. And right now, I mean, still, a lot of people don't understand this, but listen, I'm in New York. And with all these old folks' homes, my good friend's mother has been in an old folks' home. Well, guess what? Now she's in the hospital. And he still can't visit her. Now, in certain hospitals, you can have one visitor. But the system is set up in such a way where she is about, I don't know, a mile and a half from the hospital that she could be visited. It's a $3,000 car ride. A $3,000 car ride, and then one of your family members gets to visit you in the hospital at a time. That's what we're living under. And then they'll tell you about social distancing and the fact that schools may not come back. And I'm just waiting for that ball to drop in New York State, especially colleges. It's going to eviscerate the economy even more. They can't come back, but we can literally, throughout my state, in places like Syracuse, in places like Buffalo, throughout the city, and in small communities everywhere, have gatherings of 500 to 10,000 people arm to arm in 70 to 80 degree weather. And we talked about this before everything popped off. And I always said, look, this is a real thing, but no matter what, the solution is going to be worse than the problem. And here that solution is, where I have a governor saying that my state is going to be reimagined by 3 eugenist billionaires in Michael Bloomberg, Bill Gates, and Eric Schmidt. And we don't have any say about it, Dan. So let's talk about that aspect. Again, you're showing other protests. That's not allowed. You're showing and covering other doctors that are giving their medical opinions. Those videos are getting pulled. But none of these videos are going to get pulled whatsoever from any other outlet talking about Black Lives Matter. And like I said, man, hey, racism is going to exist no matter what. That's the other thing. Like, what are they demanding? They're saying defund the police. You can't change someone's heart through legislation or at the barrel of a gun. And let's be honest, the people at the top couldn't give a rat's ass what color you are. You're just an ant to them anyway. You know, the predator class just wants to manipulate you. So we've had 2 weeks of protests, riots, lootings, mass gatherings. What's the next 2 weeks look like, Dan?
Oh, man, I don't think it's looking good, Jason. I feel these things are going to continue to escalate. In fact, on that note, while I was sitting in jail, the arresting officer eventually came in to the cell to talk to me, and he said, look, these events are going to continue. There's going to be more of these. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you continue to go to these events and cover them, you're going to continue to use up our resources. And we can't have that. We're not here to be your personal bodyguard. We can't have you coming to these things, using up our resources unnecessarily. So I would strongly suggest you never, ever, ever cover one of these rallies again. And he tried to really enforce that on me. He did mention, he said, you know, now you are a free citizen. You're free to do what you want. You can go if you like. But I'm strongly suggesting that you do not go. And again, Jason, I am coming at this from as neutral as a position as I can, trying to document these events. As you said, I did a 3-hour live stream leading up to that, where people say I was being the instigator, where you can clearly see that's not true just by watching the footage. So it's mind-boggling. And the part that really the real kicker here, just to get back to what we were saying before, is the Canadian health officials, Bonnie Henry, Dr. Tam, they all are now saying, yeah, go protest. No, for sure. You know, it's important. It's an important part of democracy. Go do that. But please maintain social distancing. This Dr. Tam said, yeah, it's okay to go protest right now, but don't yell because you're going to spit droplets of potentially contaminated saliva into the air. So just bang your hands or bring some instruments like pot and pans and make noise that way. So again, 2 weeks ago, I'm the COVIDiot nanny killer. And now they're saying, no. You guys go ahead and protest. It's the right thing to do. Just make sure you maintain social distancing. Absolutely insane.
You know, another really odd aspect to me is that you know that politicians would not be saying the same thing if somehow we were able to get this many people out in the streets for Julian Assange. But we can't even get 100 people out in the streets for Julian Assange. Most people don't even know that he's about to be extradited to the United States. Most people don't know that he's not even an American citizen. Most people don't know that he exposed the war crimes of the elite. A lot more brown and black people being drone bombed over the last decade plus and tortured in Gitmo than somebody that had a long criminal rap sheet, literally was caught with drugs on there after committing a crime. And I don't know whether Derek Chauvin is a racist or not. I think he used excessive force. I think the video shows that. He may be the biggest racist in the world. I don't know. I don't know what's in that guy's fucking heart. But I can tell you this. The war machine is way fucking racist. And they don't care who they kill. And no one's getting out in the street over that. And no one's saying defund Lockheed Martin and defund Raytheon and defund the National Security Agency. Nobody. Instead,
the crazy thing about it, Jason, is these people. This is essentially kind of an anti-police brutality rally. Really, is what it was. And what these people don't realize is I've made a film, a couple of documentary films, but one in particular, Into the Fire, which is seen here on the wall behind me, is documenting the Canadian police state. And I would argue it's probably the Canadian documentary on the Canadian police state. So I've been, exposing what these people are trying to expose for over a decade. You know, I'm the guy who produced and directed and made that film. They have no idea about that. They're actually attacking one of their own in that sense when it comes to being against police brutality. I've been speaking out against police brutality for well over a decade. So it just goes to show these people really didn't know who I am. It was really just groupthink mob mentality. I would suggest maybe 95% of those people who were wanting my blood had never actually seen any of my videos. And that's why they couldn't answer the question as to what makes you think I'm racist? What makes you think I'm a white supremacist? But the big thing to take away from this, Jason, is just how quickly mob mentality can descend into something incredibly dangerous. And if we don't continue to expose this for what is going on, as I said in my video yesterday, this may lead to worse things. We could start seeing guys like me being curb stomped on the street if these things continue to escalate in the way they do. I mean, I was hit in the head with a bottle. That's happened a few times now, but it seems like things are escalating. So to get back to your question, how's it looking in the next couple of weeks? I don't think it's looking very good, Jason. I feel that things are really just starting to brew up now, and it's only going to get worse.
You know, I wish you were wrong. But, you know, again, I'm stuck in this state that's still under this, like, COVID 1984 reality. I'm having problems even registering a vehicle I bought now 2 weeks ago. You know, I had to literally write a blank check to the government and drop my paperwork off and hope that I get plates. And I want out. I want to find out where in this country there's freedom. But, you know, you can see it's not just the United States. It's not just Canada. The powers that be, the predator class, have used this as I thought they would, to control things, roll things out, and consolidate power while gutting the economy on a level most people don't understand. You know, the stock market can't keep going up if they don't plan to fire a bunch of people this quarter. So, you know, where do you think that's going to fit into this? Do you think that as many people are going to be out in the streets looting when they actually realize their jobs are gone for good? Or will the media portray it as they're the bad guys now, and somehow, you know, this will be the birth of some kind of a universal basic income for the United States and our neighbors to the north?
Well, I do see a lot of this as a direct result of the lockdown measures. I mean, self-isolation, isolating and being on lockdown is quite psychological. It's not good for our human psyche, for our health, emotionally, spiritually, all these things. So when you've just had months of that, believe me, people are ready to get out, and they're pissed off, Jason. They're ready to take their anger out on the state. And it seems that the George Floyd protest originally was a perfect excuse for these violent, angry individuals to go ahead and go out there and start smashing things and letting out the rage that has been pent up in them because of the government over the last few months. Now, I think what may come of that, to take it back to COVID, is that we've seen them talking over and over about this second wave, this potential second wave. Watch out for the fall when the second wave comes. Well, if these protests and looting continue, if we do see a so-called second wave that comes in, I think they're going to be able to clamp down on everybody so much more, and to really instrict absolutely insane draconian forced lockdowns, to be able to say, look, no more messing around, guys. We cannot, take any chances anymore. Zero protests, zero going anywhere. It's for your safety. And that's what I think this is all brewing up to. A much, much, much bigger lockdown scenario coming potentially in the near future, but I hope not.
Damn, Dan. I hope not, too, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, my friend. You can support Dan right now by going to his GoFundMe. Dan Dix, attacked in mob rampage, gets arrested. And make sure that you're not only subscribed to Press for Truth. I mean, listen, he's got a ton of subscribers, but they're not helping the situation. Fully demonetized. I rarely get a... I'm subscribed. I think, I'm not sure, should I ring the bell? I think I do have it on all. Yeah, I have it on all. I don't get all of his notifications. It's not even close. So make sure you also follow him on Twitter at DanDixPFT. What do you want to leave my audience with, my friend?
Well, I mean, we really gotta stop looking at this as a racial issue. That's what the divide is all about. I think people need to look at this more of a state versus the people issue, and we need to always take the side of the victim over the aggressor. So if it's a destructive police officer harming an innocent individual, then I'm on the side of the guy getting harmed and against the aggressor. But if it's these looters and violent people who are attacking private businesses, then I'm on the side of the private businesses and against the aggressors, the looters. So it's not so black and white. We have to look at this in a different way so that we're not divided, and that we realize it really is about this top-down control coming at the hands of the government. And once we realize that and begin to disconnect ourselves and disassociate and decentralize from the government as much as we can, that's when I think we're going to start to see real progress. Because a lot of these people are just begging the government for more state power, more centralized control, and they don't even realize that. So I think the answer moving forward lies in decentralizing our life from government in all aspects, and that's the only way we can move forward positively. So yes, I would encourage people, check me out on YouTube, Press for Truth, but it's important to also subscribe to me on the other platforms, BitChute and Minds and Float and Steemit. There's a whole bunch of them. Links are located in the description of every one of my videos. But I think our days are probably numbered here on YouTube. So it's really important for people to also not only subscribe to me here, but subscribe to me on these other channels moving forward as well, because the censorship is really starting to rack up now too.
Absolutely. Dan Dix, everybody, thank you, my friend. I hope to do it soon, and I hope that it's under better circumstances. And listen, take it to these mother truckers, man. Go after them, because not only for them to arrest you, but then to suggest you never go there, but you can, you're a free citizen, it is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, that's mafia-style tactics, and that's something that the police should be exposed for.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dan, thank you so much, brother. Dan Dix, everybody. He kills it every time. I want to remind you, I am fully demonetized on this platform. $5, $10, $15, it means the world to me. We're going to do a few other videos, maybe even do a walk-in talk. I'm going to do one on Dana White. Not anything to do with mixed martial arts. I may even play it on Mixed Martial Mindset as well. But Dana White said something last night at the post-fight press conference that I think everybody in America needs to hear to understand what's coming. Or make sure you subscribe, thumb the videos up, and remember in the playlist section here, Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. Shade the Motion Picture, in which Dan Dix is featured, all free right now. Love you guys. See you on the flip side.